Hello and welcome back to Infinity Train Rambling Reviews. I am very excited to be back chatting Mingi, and Ryan. I like that they slipped in a guide to pronounce Min's full name in the episode in the form of a belligerent customer. But yeah, we're back to talk about Infinity Train. I'm so excited that this series is here. I'm so sorry, by the way, for those who were sort of mentioning that you were kind of waiting for these to drop. I had a couple on Twitter and I had at least one, I think, on YouTube. So yeah, sorry about that. Basically, really busy at the moment. Finding time to watch and record these is tricky. As evidenced by the fact we haven't had a ramble log for a little while until yesterday, and even that one was just a segment from another podcast because I'm, as I said, very busy. So let's get to it straight away. For those wondering why I didn't do a trailer breakdown in the end, on top of being busy, in the end I just kind of thought back to the previous seasons and remembered that, like, as I went through the series, I was able to keep calling back to the trailers and pointing out them, because when you analyze a trailer in that level of detail, you always spot stuff that you don't just spot from a casual viewing of a trailer. Details that help you piece together things that you probably shouldn't be able to piece together yet. Unintended sort of sequence of events stuff. So I actually felt myself, having watched that trailer the once, just going, I don't think I want to. Like, I'm excited. I just think I want to go in and experience this in a bubble, and I really have experienced it in a bubble. I've on our own Discord at Nothing But Static. There's a little spoilery chat for Infinity Train. I've not gone anywhere near it. I haven't looked at any reaction on Twitter, and I'm also a member of an Infinity Train Discord specifically, and I haven't gone anywhere near that either, which has been very, very tempting to see what the reaction has been. But I am going in pretty much as blind as you can do without, not seeing the trailer at all. But I've seen the trailer the once, so I knew going into it. From the trailer, I had vibes that it was set in the past, and I had vibes. I got some sense of both of our main characters, and the idea that they were both going to have. They were going to have a personal issue that was their number being equal and linked, which was fascinating to me as an idea. That's pretty much all I took away from the trailer. So, which I also now saw a month ago. So I actually don't really remember what the trailer contained much at all beyond some of the broader ideas. So yeah, that's where we're at. I've just watched episode 1. For those who haven't listened to these before, I do it episode by episode. So we're starting right now, episode 1. I just finished watching it for the second time. I watched it once through. My usual pattern is to watch it once for funsies, for my own enjoyment, and then to go through it with a more critical sort of eye to sort of scrape for details and information, and anything to sort of just anything that helps inform the discussion here. So. First thing I want to talk about straight away is the framing for this episode. Such an interesting idea to start with the backstory. I guess you kind of have to, right? Because you put a single character on the train, whether it be Tulip or Jesse, or even Grace and Simon, they have no immediate incentive to explain their circumstances or discuss their circumstances pre-train, because no one on the train knows them. Whereas if you've got two characters that come from the same place, it would be frustrating, I think, if we started the way we started with some of the other characters. Well, maybe not Tulip, because Tulip, we did get a bit of her backstory before she got on the train, but particularly with Jesse and stuff, it was almost like a mystery how we'd gotten on the train. Same with Grace and Simon, we got more context for that later on. But of course, with two characters like this, there'd be no point in hiding their backstory, and I'm sure there's still details we're missing, but there'd be no point in hiding the broad strokes, because it would theoretically come up immediately anyway. So they've sort of gone the Tulip route of giving us a pretty good context for their backstory, and they did it through the sort of framing of 1-1 and Amelia watching the tapes. That not every, but most scenes when they cut briefly to the static before they went through it, and right up top we hear on one, then 1-1's brother on one, who is even madder. Let me tell you, he's on one. I don't know if that phrase translates. I don't know if that phrase exists in other countries, but when someone's really hyper and going crazy, you say they're on one. That's a British phrase, I think. Like my cat the other night had loads of energy and was just running circles around our living room, and we described him as being on one. Anyway, 1-1's on one enough. I don't need an even further removed 1-1. Thank you. Well, actually, I suppose not in this, because this is pre-Amelia's takeover by the sound of it. So we start with this framing. So you hear 1-1's voice saying this is how it always begins, but it's like it's 1-1 not divided almost. It's 1-1 as he was prior to Amelia doing whatever she did to get him out of the conductor's position. Before he was like, I guess, got a, I don't know what you'd call it, a personality disorder. I don't know. It's like he was balanced and then he was split into his two halves, personality-wise. You know, I find that really fascinating. I don't have much to speculate on what that means or could mean yet, because I don't know. And you'll hear me saying this a lot as we go through this series. I don't think, based on this setup, we're getting any major lore. I think this is just going to be. This was just meant to be a sort of an interesting season about characters that they were invested in telling us about. So I'm not going into this series expecting to discover how Amelia took over the train the first time. I think there is a possibility they could go that way, but I just don't see it being this season. I feel like at some point you'd want to, if you were a creator of the show and you didn't know your series was ending, you'd think about doing the Amelia's true backstory and her exact circumstances as its own season. Like, do an actual season with Amelia at the heart of it. Maybe, you know, maybe the very final season would be your Amelia season with her finally getting her number down to 0 and getting her door. And that's where you would fill in the gaps of her story. I just don't feel like it's going to be conducive to telling Min and Ryan's story, if I'm honest. It's nice that we've had the teaser at it, and it also I suppose confirms for anyone not paying attention that we're in the past, because I think as well it's a bit subtle that they're in the past. Well, it's not that subtle, I suppose, but I could see somebody watching this more casually not taking in that it's the past until that moment when you see young Amelia. So I guess that's part of why they've done that. So it's a nice little tease. It's interesting to see the 1-1 stuff, but I just, it's hard for me to speculate too hard on any of that side of it, because I do genuinely feel like we're not really getting answers to that ever, maybe now, because this is the final season. It's such a shame, because of all the seasons for them to have gone out on, this season is probably, it's going to suffer a bit for its positioning. I feel like if this season had come as season 3 and season 3 had come as season 4, it might be better, because 4 at least, it felt like it had big implications, you know, with the Amelia and Hazel stuff. So I think people would have been maybe happier with that as the ending than this. But because I'm so convinced, based on a couple of tweets and the trailer, I just think that this is going to be a very light series in terms of the overall situation on the train. It's more going to be about these two characters, which I'm totally on board for as a series. As a final series, obviously that is problematic, but we'll talk about it more when we get in, because maybe I'll be proved wrong. Maybe this will have some sort of closure towards the end. Who knows? And just not expecting it. So you won't hear as much, I don't think, speculation from me this series, because I don't think it's going to get us into the deep lore. So let's talk about Min and Ryan. Both really good, interesting characters. Yeah, they're both adorable when they're very young. I straight away you get the vibe of the time frame, I think, from the Ziggy Stardust sort of. Well, I suppose it's not Ziggy Stardust; it's the album after that. It's the Aladdin Sane David Bowie cover with the lightning bolt on the painted on the face, which is I think from like 74, 73. So that suggests that these kids are. Probably, I mean, that's probably quite a new album. I guess so I tried to do the math on like where this is. So the biggest clue is obviously the van, which has a sticker on it that says class of 85. So this puts certainly, with this within a year of that, really, because it seems like they're now talking about university having graduated. So class of 85 tells me this is probably 86, 87. So if they're going to uni in 86, and they're about 18, 19 based on the age you'd roughly consider going to university, then that puts them as being born around 67, 68. So when they were, young kids playing in the yard, 73, 74, that Bowie album would have been out. So it feels like they've deliberately sort of like tried to make it like something of the time, something completely current in the moment, So it's because there's no way a kid of this era would be that invested in that Bowie album. So yeah, it's pretty clear straight away where this is roughly set. So I think we're in 85, 86. I think most likely 86, because I think it's like class of 85. They finish high school, and then this is them about to go to university. So I guess this is like, yeah, actually that's a bit. It's probably the same summer, right? Because he's presumably he's traveled throughout the summer. But there's a montage in this, and I don't know how much time passes in it. Maybe a year. Maybe they're both waiting to like get on with their lives. I don't know. It's unclear, to be honest. It could be a few different things. But basically, we're talking around 85, 86 as the sort of era for this show, which fits with Amelia's age when we see her. So yeah, I'm going to get out of all that random math stuff, because I'm only going to confuse myself. They're really interesting characters. I think Ryan is like clearly a dreamer enabled by his parents, and Min is clearly, a dreamer crushed by his parents. It sounds really cruel when you phrase it that way, but it definitely feels like, it almost feels like his parents talking when he's like, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to go into finance, none of this silly music, because we see several examples of the parents like not taking the music thing seriously. They want him to learn a real instrument, and then when they hear him playing that when he's nearly at university age, his dad says something like, you're going to put that silly thing down, or something in that vein. So it just feels like he's been brought up in a much stricter situation than Ryan. Which makes for a really interesting contrast, but then it makes you question why the characters are. It makes you question why they're making the decisions they're making, because there's a part of you that wonders, maybe Min just really isn't that passionate about the music. Maybe he's right when he says that Ryan, it was always Ryan's dream, not his. He just sort of got dragged along. Maybe that's true, Or maybe it was his dream, and over the years his parents sort of pushing him towards more academics and more, sensibly trying to get him to, the life of a starving artist is not the life many parents want for their kids. I understand that impulse. They're not bad people for wanting to encourage their child for doing that. It's a tricky balance though, because you also don't want to be dream crusher. You've got to let people find their own path. I think that's important as well. So, but it's hard to tell how much influence Min's parents have had on him, because from his perspective now, he's saying, "Oh, that was always your thing, not really mine." And presumably that's why we separated. So I don't know. I'm torn on how much of influence his parents have on him. The episode certainly suggests heavy, but was he always going that way? Was there always a bit of fraud? Was he always sort of not as passionately into it as Ryan was? So I don't know. So for those who don't remember, if you're listening to this in the future, I should really clarify. Obviously, it's the first episode. It is just quite literally the backstory of Min and Ryan both growing up together, loving music, wanting to do, to dreaming of traveling to play a big show in New York. Which maybe that's where this is all going. Maybe the final episode will have them doing that. God, I hope. I really do hope. It's going to be really interesting to see how this season plays out, because I think we've got them both with the same number. They've fallen out over the years because one didn't want to go in the end and follow that dream, and the other one did for whatever reason. Whether parents influenced that or not, I'm not sure. But the situation is, I think, that they've both gotten onto that train because they've got something to work out. Is it the same thing? Their numbers are identical. So is it one problem that once solved gets them both out of there? Or is it two different problems and the numbers will go down at different rates? Does Ryan need to learn to not pull Min in a direction he doesn't want to go? Does Min maybe need to be a little feel a little freer to do what he feels passionate about. Unclear. But is there a possibility the numbers could go down at different rates? And if there's a possibility the numbers could go down at different rates, could one person's door appear before the others? That seems like the best drama, right? If this is just the story of the two learning to be a bit more understanding of where each other's coming from, and then their doors appear simultaneously and they leave, I don't think that's particularly interesting. I think there's got to be more to it, right? So I could see a situation where one's door appears, the other's doesn't. Generate drama that way. Because again, I don't think these guys are going to be particularly involved in any of the major lore of the show. I don't think they're going to be involved in Amelia's overtake of the train. I don't think they're going to be. I still don't see any of that happening. So you've got to draw drama from somewhere else, right? And it's got to come from the character. But obviously, we're early days yet, and the show, as a rule, never really plays its hand fully with the characters and the reasons they're on the train until later on. So there's still plenty of time and plenty of room for some interesting sort of stuff like that, where we're going to discover maybe that they, I don't know, there's more to their fallout than we think. Because it did feel, I must admit, in this episode, it feels a bit sudden. Because it's a little unclear why Min leaves. So they're about to play a gig, and Ryan says, "My dad's going to give me his van," which again is the opposite of what's happened with Min, because Min's parents have been very specific, and they've been very, you know, they've not been very encouraging. Whereas Ryan's parents have been encouraging enough to give him a van to travel the country with and play these gigs. So it's going to be interesting to see. So to carry on with my previous point before I get myself distracted. So he says, I'm getting the van. We're gonna go tour. We're gonna go. That's our lives. And it feels like there's a part of me that goes, that's just been seeing it, you know, someone else planning his entire life out for him and bottling it, and running away. But there's a part of me as well that wonders, you know, if there's more to it than just that, that we haven't seen yet. Missing scene. Some key crucial piece of evidence of information that makes that decision make more sense. Like, has something else just happened to him? You know, is there a sick parent that he needs to be looking after? Is there a reason he's so determined to make money? You know, that I feel like another dimension to his decision is potentially needed. But yeah, so there's always room for exploring, and there's definitely a lot more to these characters than we've seen on the surface so far. But it's definitely a good setup. I'm very excited to see where that goes. All right, quick interjection before I wrap this up. I'm editing this podcast, and I'm getting the stills from the episode, and I've noticed a few things that I just want to touch on. I think going forward, just so I don't miss stuff, I think I won't record until I've already got the images, because you notice stuff when you do it frame by frame like that. I don't go through the whole episode frame by frame, obviously, but to get the right stills, I go through it quite extensively. First of all, looking back, I think it's pretty clear that Mingy does want to do the music. He looks sad when he's filling out the university form, and then when he gets out his little thing and starts making music, he like smiles. When he gets the acceptance letter, he initially smiles, but then that fades. And it could just be that he doesn't care about music, but he cares a lot about Ryan, and that you know, he does the music so he gets to spend time with Ryan. It's like he's taking interest in that to have that friendship with him. There's also when Ryan hugs him, I noticed that he blushes, so maybe it's romantic, but only one way. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced, but I do think it's very clear that he does want to pursue the music, whether that is for the actual love of music, or as an excuse to spend time with Ryan. I'm not certain, but I thought that was very interesting. I also thought it was interesting that Min seems to think they're in the wrong booth later in the episode, but I checked and they're in the same booth, so he's just wrong about that. It's literally the same booth. Also, I'm an idiot. The town name was literally everywhere. I didn't need to do googling of half names to work out Powell Lake. It's literally, it's on like, it's the name of the school. It's on the leaflet he shows him. It's in a ton of places. I'm just an idiot. So yeah, there you go. A couple of things I didn't notice until I looked back through the episode. So yeah, thought I'd add that. Anyway, back to wherever I was in the podcast. I thought the montage itself was done really well. I loved the split screen montage where you see them both going in different ways and you see their lives sort of almost intersecting in weird ways. Like it's almost like the universe. Again, it's the thing one talks about at the end of probabilities, because like he's playing the song and they line that up with the footage of Min back at home, playing along, but he doesn't. They're not in the same room, so they don't know they're doing it. There's the moment they both nearly phone each other, and they line those up so they're simultaneous. And then they keep the split screen in such a clever way for when they bring them back together, so you can see both of them sort of faces from each other, like over the shoulder almost at the same time. It's really neat. It's a really cool visual. I'd be up for them doing more of that as the series goes on, like split screening certain sequences if they're in different places. I think that's a really cool idea to do more of in a season where you've got two protagonists that have been brought onto the train simultaneously. I feel like you can get away with doing some creative stuff like that. Steven Universe did something similar in one of its later episodes when Steven sort of smiled spoilers that Steven sort of split and you saw both sides at once. But it was from literally their eye perspective, whereas this is actually like two camera shots almost following them simultaneously. It's kind of almost 24-esque. I really liked it. I thought that was neat, and I hope they do that more. I thought it was visually interesting, but also really sort of lands the theme of how linked these two must be, which is, I think, going to be part of this. I mean, they were the opening of the episode says that it shows they were born the same day. It looks like, and they were next to each other in the hospital room where they keep the babies in those little boxes. Which I always wonder why they do that. I don't know. This is my lack of knowledge letting me down here. Whenever I see that on TV, as a person who's not had children, is that a thing? Is there just a room with a bunch of like clear baskets with babies in, just all lined up? Like you see that on TV a lot, and the parents just looking through glass. I feel like they try to keep the babies with the parents, don't they? Maybe they don't. I don't know. This is just ignorance more than anything here. This isn't anything beyond that. So yeah, I thought that this was a really strong episode. In terms of like dealing with other elements of this, I know it's played as a joke, but I was curious as to why Ryan had given away his van. Was he that out of money? Because we see Ryan touring, and you think it's these big gigs, but he's playing like bingo halls and stuff, like in old folks' homes. It's like, yeah, not a lot of success at all. So I don't know if was there a money situation for Ryan? Is that why he gave the van away, or did he just give the van to the girl in the hope that she wouldn't dump him, and then she did anyway? I don't know. I'm not sure what the intent was with that. I guess we'll see, because the van was a big part of his plan. So it seems really heartbreaking to the thought of him giving that up. So the train ticket the way they get on the train is interesting as well. So he basically he comes back. They've obviously not seen each other a little while. He's surprised to see him working at Dumpty's Diner, which has the Humpty Dumpty style egg as the mascot, which, by the way, in the actual nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty, he's never described as an egg. For some reason, society at some point decided inexplicably to make that character an egg. I have no idea why. To this day, I will never know the answer to that. And if someone has the answer and you want to put it in the comments, please don't. I don't want to know what logic took somebody to taking that nursery rhyme and turning him into an egg. Anyway, yeah. So he basically shows back up and is like, "Look, I've got a gig, a proper gig, a real gig in New York, and I want you to come back with me." Like it's like Ryan's last ditch effort to rekindle that friendship and that passion for music, and he's bought a ticket. And we get to see the ticket, which says Well Lake, something Well Lake. So I did a bit of Googling, and the closest thing I can find in Canada, which is where they are, where they live, where it's made clear that they live, the only thing I could find that was close to that was Powell Lake, Powell Lake, which sort of fits. So, shrug, like, yeah, I guess that must be it. Powell Lake. Not that that's significant or anything. It's it was annoying me that I couldn't see the start of because his thumb was over it. So yeah, it took a quick Google, but that I think is where it's supposed to be set. So there you go. Ryan is a bit of a jerk here because it's clear whether influenced by his parents or not. His assertion is that Min's given up on his dreams, but Min's saying otherwise, and you have to take your friends at face value. You can't decide you think differently about what they think. That's weird and mildly cruel. So yeah, I'm not sure how I felt about that. On the whole, it seemed a bit cruel of Ryan to take the keys and run, because that's what happened. So basically, Min's got the job at the local diner to sort of cover himself until he goes to uni, and he's about to lock up, and Ryan steals the keys and runs to get on the train with the keys, knowing that Ryan would chase him. And then they get on the train, but then inside the train there's another train, which is the Infinity Train entrance, which again looks different every time it appears to somebody in the outside world. Obviously, once you're in it, it looks the same, but the portal that gets you there always takes a different form. And what I thought was neat about this one, it was super colorful, and it had like a swoosh on it that I think if you rotated 90 degrees would look like another lightning bolt swoosh from the Aladdin Sane David Bowie album. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I think Ryan comes across not great there. He, if you don't follow your dreams, I'll make you, I think is the quote. But minutes before, Min had told him, it's what you wanted, not me. So it just feels like he's not listening to his friend and what his friend actually might want. And even if his friend wants that under influence, and pressure, still not his place to force it. So really interesting to see if that sort of is what comes up in terms of their issues with each other. So I'm excited. I mean, the whole episode takes place pretty much off train, so it's one of the more normal episodes of Infinity Train. We didn't get anything really zany in this one, so I'm kind of I must admit, as an episode, it's a really good setup for a season because it focuses on making you care for the characters, and that's what you need in a season where that is clearly going to be the absolute focus, and it always is on this show. But I think the show is usually more of a mix of lore and character, whereas this one feels like it's going to be all character all the time, which I'm in for. We don't spend much time on the train. We don't get any zany train antics this episode, so I'm excited also for where. To see where it goes from here, because it does feel like one element of the show is missing when you do an episode like this. Because even Tulip, when she had, I think even in Tulip's first episode, there was 5 minutes pre-train and then 5 minutes on train, I think. So I don't, so there was still some train madness. This is, I think, the most we've had, the most time we've spent not on a train in a single condensed block, like a whole episode. With the exception of the last sort of 20 seconds or whatever. I did think it was interesting that Amelia was up front asking 1-1 questions, and again, this idea of 1-1 being this sort of usurping version of himself, where he was a little bit more stable. Saying that, interestingly, that statistically the probability of anything happening. On statistics, the probability is that anything that can happen will happen on the train, essentially. Even improbable things will happen given enough time. That's not an exact quote, I'm just sort of paraphrasing. But Amelia's little face there, because obviously she lost her partner, so she's probably thinking if improbable things can happen, maybe one of those improbable things is he could come back. I love that Amelia's up front, by the way. I love that she's basically smart enough that she got straight on the train and then forced her way to the front, wait a minute. The one thing I am very interested by, if this is pre-Amelia's overtake of the train, I wonder if the train is going to behave differently. They're in uniforms. One's sane. Sometimes in the current series, you don't know if the train has always been the way it is, or if it's since Amelia overthrew the train, she's sort of thrown it out of whack and it's all gone a bit bonkers. Or has it always been that kind of bonkers? The cars are the cars, right? they're gonna have weird stuff in them, but like the way that the numbers work, the way it all works, I think might turn out to be a little different, because he refers to them as going to their seats as well, which I thought was interesting. He says once at their seats, it's up to them to sort things out, and then adds, if not, then they'll die here, which is like, I mean, I guess, yeah, you'll live there forever until you die. Or does he mean they'll be like, do people get disintegrated if they don't get their number down in a certain amount of time in the old days? Who knows? I suspect not. I suspect he just means, it's very ominous, but I suspect he probably just means you'll just be on the train until the day you die. But very, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be looking out for differences in train behavior going forward now. Because I'm going to be interested to see, does the steward have more of an active role? Are there actual seats for the passengers now? Obviously, in an Amelia run train, there were no introduction videos for people so they'd understand where they were. But in a 111 run train in the modern day, he's got these little videos explaining to people what their situation is. But, and this is a big but, did he do that before Amelia seemingly broke him? So yeah, observing the experience of a person on this train prior to that original sort of usurping the of the conductor is going to be fascinating. So I think I've probably rambled for too long, 30 minutes, dear Lord. But there's a lot going on. I didn't think I'd have a lot to say on this episode, but when I actually sat down and made notes, I was like, oh yeah, look, there's quite a lot to talk about. So yeah, very excited. I always say that when I do these. I'm always just like, it's very exciting. I'm all excited. I'll see if I can curb my doing of that in future episodes. But I am genuinely very excited, and I'm almost sad that I didn't get a chance to do this for a couple of days. I would have loved to have been on this sooner, because it's going to be a long one. We've got 9 left. But yeah, thank you guys for listening so much. Very happy to be back doing this. And I'm going to go watch episode 2 pretty much right now. I don't know whether I'll record straight after, but I'm definitely going to watch episode 2 pretty much immediately. But yeah, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one.